automating back-office deposit operations with a digital workforce. You're going to hear from 3 speakers today. Of course, myself, Greg Richards, again with EnableSoft. You'll hear from Larry Needjame, Director, here with EnableSoft as well. And then a bit later on, we'll introduce Ken Stroud with Bank of the Carolinas, and he'll talk to us a little bit about his particular case study and how they do things at Bank of the Carolinas. Today's agenda, we're going to do our best to have you out of here in 30 minutes. We've already covered the introductions. First up, we'll cover traditional processes and deposits, and we'll review that very quickly. Then we'll move into a process overview, pretty much how you're doing things today. We'll introduce Foxtrot. We'll bring Ken on again for that case study, and then we'll wrap up with Q&A at the end, again, if there's time. Quickly, just to introduce the company I represent today, EnableSoft. Who are we? Well, we're really about what's possible today. We're an innovator in productivity and efficiency software solutions. We've been doing it for the better part of about 2 decades. We're a partner to nearly 500 banks and credit unions. Of those, we're fortunate to call 1/3 of the top 1,000 banks and about a half of the top 100 performing banks as customers, and we are based in Orlando, Florida. So we're going to talk a lot today about automating manual processes in the back office. Let's start by first really defining what we mean when we talk about manual tasks, manual processes in deposits. These are just a few examples here. When we talk about manual processes in deposits in the back office, we're talking about things like changing statement codes, dormant account fees, assessing those dormant account fees, product changes from one DDA type to another, let's say, even wire transfers, account opening and closing, something as routine as that, overdraft sweeps or fee maintenance, overdraft elections. In each of these cases, all of these things, and probably many, many more, are manual processes that are critical to the success of your organization and critical to serving and satisfying customers. So we're doing all of these things, and we're doing them manually, and we've probably always done them this way. But what's the downside? Well, we ask our customers, what do they experience when they're doing processes like these sorts of things manually in their back office? And in general, they tell us that doing these tasks manually pulls resources away from more important projects, usually things like serving customers or improving the time to market for new products, prevents your teams from building value in very important ways, really those ways that we just talked about. It's costly. What's the real cost of pulling a human being off the floor to serve people and moving them into the back office to change overdraft elections or assess fees, for example? And they're unstructured. In most cases, our customers tell us they have one person doing something one way, opening and closing accounts or whatever the case may be. If that person leaves, another person comes in, and they might do the same process a totally different way. There is really no best and most efficient way to do these unstructured processes when they're done manually inside of your back office environment. So now we've kind of defined all of these processes, and you've got many, many more going on inside of your bank or your credit union. And we're going to talk about automating those processes today. But how do we first identify which processes can be automated and which ones could probably continue on as is, and we can still manually enter and change data as we've been doing? And we find that you should ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, is this a mission-critical project or process? Is this something that would otherwise be accomplished manually versus, say, programmatically with a macro or outsourcing to your core vendor? Will I need to add or divert human resources to accomplish the job? Will I need to pull people off of the sales floor, for example, or away from serving customers in order to accomplish this project? If you've answered yes to any of these 3 questions, or maybe all of these 3 questions, then chances are that that particular process, or task in question can be automated at great time and money savings to you. So how you're doing these things now, we've already kind of hit on the first option here, MUPs, MUPs, manual unstructured processes. That's doing things by hand. Custom programming, we'll talk a little bit about that. That's things like VBA scripts or macros. And outsourcing, that's usually finding a third party to do the job for you or outsourcing it to your core vendor, for example. That's usually with larger projects, core migrations, big data conversions, things like that. So your options to kind of go a little more in-depth versus the slide that we just looked at, your options status quo, that's a nice way of saying just kind of manually entering data or those manual unstructured processes that we talked about. The pros here, there's no added cost. You're already doing these things now by hand. It's very straightforward. The person that's doing this job can probably continue to do the job without any additional education or training, and you've always done it that way. We say that's around here anyway, at EnableSoft, that's a bad reason probably to continue to do anything. But if you've always done it that way, there's probably some security and probably some time and money savings in that as well. The cons, of course, anytime you're having humans enter and change data, assess overdraft fees, or execute wire transfers, time-consuming. It's inaccurate. Again, anytime you're introducing the human element, you risk compromising your data quality and your data accuracy. And then can it even be done by hand? I would argue if it's a big project, again, like a core migration or a data conversion, chances are there's no way you have enough resources inside of your institution now to do these sorts of manual projects by hand. Programming, again, we talked about macros and VBA scripts. Pros here, you can automate things on the cheap, right? If you've got a fairly competent IT team in-house who can write a VBA script, who can write in VBA, or they can create a macro for you, that cost is already sunk, and chances are you can develop some kind of automated solution to automate these processes for you. They work well when they work. No human resources needed. Again, it's a program. It works programmatically without human intervention. And in a lot of cases, they're simple to run. Cons, they tend to run off the rails. If your screen, objects on your screen change orientations or change positions, or something goes wrong with your data, your macros can break and kind of run off the rails and do more harm than good. Knowledge intensive, again, these are typically programs that are written by your in-house IT team. They're purpose specific. You generally end up with one macro to do one thing and another macro to do another thing versus sort of a Swiss Army knife solution. And then they're clunky. That's kind of the sum total of the three cons that we mentioned above them. Finally, outsourcing. Again, this is for really big projects. Maybe going to your core. It's help on demand. It's experienced labor. They know what they're doing. You can shift your financial and regulatory risk to an outside entity, and then there's budget certainty, of course. You negotiate these prices ahead of time. On the con side here, of course, it's a lengthy search process if you're not going with your core to identify somebody to automate, let's say, the core conversion. It can be difficult to negotiate, and then, of course, cost. When we're talking about large projects, large data conversions, cost here can sometimes range into the tens of thousands of dollars. We would submit to you today, though, an alternative way to automate some of these processes that are currently manual going on in your back office and in your deposit operations. That option is Foxtrot software. Foxtrot is software that automates manual processes inside of any core, card system, or LOS. Works in the user interface, so essentially your application sees Foxtrot as just another user. It works with total accuracy, a very quick payback, and it's really the low-cost alternative to just about all of these options in one way or another that we've just talked about. And we'll demonstrate Foxtrot in just a little bit. So what is Foxtrot really? Well, we hit on it. Foxtrot is software, but it's software that works like a digital employee. Foxtrot works with all core systems, browser, emulator, green screen, what have you. Enters and changes data, again, just like you would, but much, much faster. Allows users to focus on building value in themselves and in their organization. So you're no longer stuck at a desk manually entering and changing data, changing customer information, executing wire transfers, changing overdraft elections, and assessing fees. Instead, you're out serving customers and building value for your organization in meaningful ways. And it can be learned and implemented by anyone, including the layperson who it's really designed for, inside of about 3 hours. Some quick case studies before we bring Ken on, and then we'll actually have a quick demo of the software. This is one customer, a $2.1 billion bank located in the Midwest. They're currently using Foxtrot for all of these activities, adding and changing flex fields. They have a core system that allows them to use and implement flex fields. They actually use it to associate different account types under one customer. One customer might have a checking account, a savings account, a business account, and so on. They use these flex fields and populate them with the same number to be able to associate all of these accounts with this customer. They actually acquired Foxtrot for this reason. They needed to add and populate about 1,000 flex fields over some accounts. Manually, it really couldn't be done. There was nobody in there that could go in and add all of those accounts and populate them, or add all those fields, excuse me, and populate them in a reasonable amount of time. After Foxtrot, however, they added, or 118,000 changes were done in 2 weeks. Foxtrot added flex fields and populated them at a clip of about 8 records a minute. Responsibility code maintenance, they do it every month between 1,000 and 5,000 accounts. This is something that a branch admin performed as time permitted, if and when time permitted. Nowadays, they automate all of their responsibility code maintenance, again, as much as 5,000 accounts a month to the tune of about 8 records a minute. And of course, the person that would ordinarily do this job is off building value elsewhere, not sitting in front of a computer and changing responsibility codes. Dormant debit account or dormant debit card maintenance, excuse me, once a year, this particular customer, a bank, goes into their accounts and all of the debit cards that have been dormant or unused for 9 months or so are canceled, and then a fee is debited from a checking or savings account of that customer. Manually, they do it every year, about 10,000 cards a year. It takes them about a minute to accomplish manually. Again, this is an annual process, but now Foxtrot handles it for them automatically at about 2 seconds per account, and again, nobody has to sit in front of a computer and manually change the data. A couple more case studies, and we'll bring Ken on. $1.5 billion Midwest bank. They actually have a reward checking system where if a customer meets certain criteria, number of branch visits and online banking elections and things like that, they are awarded or given overdraft protection automatically. They have to change that status on about 500 accounts each month. Prior to Foxtrot, it took them 16 hours to do that by hand, and after Foxtrot, it's done automatically in about an hour. Now we one credit union customer, a $350 million Northwest credit union, one of our several credit union customers, unfortunately experienced an outage in their ATM transaction processing system. They already had Foxtrot, and they went ahead and started manually entering these, or posting these transactions rather, at about the clip of about 40 transactions an hour. Somebody had the bright idea that they had Foxtrot and could automate this process. It took them about 30 minutes to write a script, and then they posted the remaining 242 transactions automatically in about an hour with Foxtrot. So that is my time for now. Now I'm going to bring on Ken Stroud with Bank of the Carolinas. Ken is a Vice President of Internal Reporting with Bank of the Carolinas. He's been with the company for about 14 years, and Ken will tell you here he's been Foxtrotting for over 8 years. So he'll talk a little bit about his bank and his application here. So please take it away, Ken.
Thanks, Greg. As you said, my name is Ken Stroud with Bank of the Carolinas. We were founded in 1998, and I've been here since 2000. So been here quite a while. We have 8 branches throughout North Carolina, and we're right around $400 million in assets. One of the major things I use Foxtrot for is a reward checking program where if a customer meets certain requirements, say they use like 12 point-of-sale transactions, they have e-statements, and they have automatic draft, then if they meet the requirement, they get a certain interest rate. If they don't, then there's a debit adjustment made to their accounts, and we usually have, there are about 1,900 accounts we do this for, and if I have to do adjustments, well, when we talked with our core provider, they said, well, okay, I get a file from the reward checking, the reward checking third-party software. They send me this file, and I could give it to the core provider, and they said, well, there'll be an initial setup fee for us to get this file monthly, and of course, there'll be a monthly charge of a couple $100. Well, I said, well, I could Foxtrot that. So what I do is I take this file and I run the debit adjustments to those, and it takes me about 5 minutes to run it. So saves us a couple $100 a month because I can do something in 5 minutes with Foxtrot. Another thing, we also have, if you use you also get a reward of ATM refunds with this reward checking program, and I will credit back the refunds to the customer accounts using Foxtrot as well, a different program a script that I wrote. Another thing we use it for, automated GL entries. I just have folks fill out a template in Excel. They send it to me usually once a week. I throw it in Foxtrot. It's done in a matter of seconds. A big thing that I did that I have to do annually is we have a holiday savings club account, and it has to have a special cycle code. Let's say it's called CC or HC for Holiday Club. And that cycle code causes a check to be produced for whatever the balance of the account is on October 31st. Well, there's apparently some reg. I don't know anything about the reg. I just go through with the process. But they say that cycle code has to be changed back so that the statements will drop quarterly. So once a year, I have to change all of these. We have about 300 accounts. I have to change the cycle code to HC so that the accounts will drop. The check will be cut on October 31st. The next day, I have to change all of these accounts to quarter end so that they'll start dropping on quarter end again. And this would take forever manually because you have to go in. You can't just do a bulk change because it makes you change on each individual account some kind of flag. Then I have to change cycle code. Then I have to turn that flag back on. So it really, I was able to knock out those cycle changes in less than 2 minutes this year. I just did it last week. So that's just one thing. I have used it for officer code changes. A lot of times you can change officer automatically using your system if you want to change every account to the exact same officer. But most of the times it's not that easy, so I'll just send out an Excel sheet and I'll have folks fill in the new officer. They send it back to me, and then I just run it through Foxtrot, and it changes them to, it changes the account number to whatever new officer code based on the Excel sheet. That's just a few of the things I use it for. If we have like a major crisis or something like that where something needs to be changed, the question I usually ask first is how can I Foxtrot that? And so I use Foxtrot as a verb here quite a bit. And on that note, I'll turn it back over to Greg.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Ken, very much. I appreciate you joining us today and helping out. Up next, I'm going to bring on Larry Nejame here, who's going to provide just a brief demonstration of Foxtrot and kind of show us how it works in a test environment. So please take it away, Larry.
Thank you, Greg. So what you see open here is our Foxtrot application. That's open here on the right. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And we have sort of a simple CIF application over here on the left. This is just a browser application. As Greg mentioned earlier, Foxtrot has the capability of working with browser applications, Windows applications, as well as green screens. So we're just going to take you through a quick process here so we can see Foxtrot in action and relate it to some of the things that we've talked about already today. And we'll play the script here. So what we've already done, we've got a little bit of Foxtrot prepared. We have the data set loaded down here. We're going to use that data to go ahead and drive our script. And really the premise for this script that we'll build during this webinar is a process to essentially mark accounts off as closed. So we're going to teach Foxtrot, just like we would a person, how to go through our CIF system on the left here, go through each one of those records, mark it off as closed, and then move on to the next one. Now, Foxtrot's really as simple to use as just dragging and dropping. So we take our little selector tool, drag it and drop it onto the area that we want to work with. Foxtrot will give you actions that only pertain to that specific section that we're working with. So we'll teach Foxtrot to really just query for a specific account. Again, we'll pull off our data set. And as we're building it, Foxtrot actually performs that action as we build it. So we've just taught Foxtrot there to search for the appropriate record. Now we need to teach Foxtrot to go in and modify that record. So we'll teach it those few actions. And again, this is really as simple as teaching a person to do this. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and change the status to open, or to closed. So we'll target that, tell Foxtrot to select a specific item. And one last thing here, we want to go ahead and update the third-party name. And we'll just have Foxtrot include a little notation on there that says closed. And last but not least, we'll have it save it. And we've built our script. So now we're ready to run our script. And Foxtrot will repeat these actions exactly like we taught it. So I'll crank this up to slow speed so we can see it running, and we'll click play. So again, Foxtrot just goes through each one of those actions just like we taught it. Now we've already done that record, so we didn't necessarily have to run that, but again, it'll go through the rest of the records on here and update it exactly like we taught it. Now a big thing with Foxtrot is consistency as well. So if we wanted to update that third-party name exactly that same way every time, Foxtrot's going to do it exactly that same way, as opposed to maybe having a team of people go through this and they might just put C, or they might put the full word closed, or they might do whatever. There tends to be a lack of consistency there. Now, again, we're only scratching the surface of what we can do, but this is just to give you an introduction to Foxtrot and how it works, and seeing a script in action. But Foxtrot can do everything from automating a task from beginning to end. Let's say you wanted to open up an application, log into an application, navigate to a screen, perform an action, and log back out. Foxtrot can handle all of that with ease. So with that, we're about to run our last record here, and I will go ahead and turn it back over to Greg.
Okay, thanks very much, Larry, for that demonstration of Foxtrot. I'll turn it right back over here to the presentation so we can wrap up for the afternoon and keep our promise of having everybody out of here in 30 minutes or less. Actually, forgive me, we'll just scroll to the correct slide. So at this point in the presentation, we'd like to invite anyone that has questions to please submit them. You have a questions box in the GoToWebinar module on your screen there on the right-hand side. So I invite you to go ahead and submit your questions at this time, and we'll go ahead and take a few minutes and read them. So one question here is, what version are we looking at? This is actually a brand new version of Foxtrot that just came out today, or a few days ago, excuse me. It's version 10.1. Foxtrot version 10 has been out now for several months, but this is the latest update, version 10.1. If you're a current Foxtrot customer or user, you can go and download that update for free at enablesoft.com. One question here is, can Foxtrot scripts be run on different computers with different screen resolutions? So Foxtrot, that's probably kind of a two-part question. Foxtrot is essentially a concurrent license model, so you can install Foxtrot basically on as many computers as you wish and run as many scripts or actions simultaneously, or simultaneous scripts as you have seats to Foxtrot. So you can have Foxtrot on multiple computers. Foxtrot is object-oriented, not positionally-oriented. So even if the position or location of objects on a screen change, so if your screen is of different resolution and things are compressed or moved around, Foxtrot will always look for that particular object on a screen, not necessarily a location. So you can, again, install Foxtrot on multiple screens with multiple resolutions, and Foxtrot will still run correctly and appropriately every time.
Yeah, it looks like there's a question here about using different types of data to load into Foxtrot directly. Foxtrot will work with all of your major data sources, anything from an Access database, DBF, Excel files, text delimited files, CSVs. So all your main data formats, Foxtrot, you can load directly into Foxtrot. You can also work with data sources outside of Foxtrot and target those directly. Looks like there's also another question here about how often are the versions updated in Foxtrot. We typically come out with small updates, bug patches, that sort of thing on a monthly basis. So we typically have a release every month. We'll typically come out with small version releases. So for instance, we just went to version 10.1. Let's say we go to 10.2. That sort of version release takes place about every quarter. And then we typically have a major version release, so going from version 10 to 11, let's say, typically once a year.
Good. So we have another question here. Can Foxtrot run in an emulator environment, also known as a green screen environment? That was just kind of touched on briefly during the presentation, but yes, regardless of whether you're on a browser-based core system or an emulator-based core system, Foxtrot will run equally well and automate tasks equally well. Time for a couple more here. Can Foxtrot be scheduled to run at certain times? Yes. You actually can use the Windows scheduler to run Foxtrot, or Foxtrot can obviously be run simply by pressing play. Foxtrot can run on a loop, but if you want Foxtrot to actually start up and run at a certain time, we recommend you use Windows scheduler for that task. Okay. And if there are no further questions, we had a few good ones submitted here. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next and final slide. So sorry about that. We're just having a little technical difficulty here. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, folks. So how can you learn more about Foxtrot? We invite you to contact us here following this webinar today. You can reach us toll-free 800-215-9397. You can send us an email simply at sales@enablesoft.com, or you see our web address, enablesoft.com. We do want to extend kind of a special offer for everyone that's attended today. If you are able to view Foxtrot in your environment and license it by the 20th of December, all attendees for today's webinar are entitled to 5 free hours of professional services. That's things like scripting help, advanced training. If you'd like help implementing an actual script or anything like that as it relates to Foxtrot above and beyond the training that you already get when you license Foxtrot, we're certainly there for you. Professional services are there for you, and we'll include 5 hours in with your actual license of Foxtrot. So with that, we'd like to leave you on a quote. This one's from Henry Ford, who is not a banker, but nonetheless, he knew something about productivity. He said, if you need a solution and don't buy it, then you will ultimately find that you have paid for it and don't have it. And certainly that's true with some of this technology that we've talked about today, and we hope that each of you will take advantage of it. And we thank you for your time. We know it's very valuable. We appreciate you spending 30 minutes of your day with us. And again, if you have any questions, or if we can demonstrate Foxtrot for you one-on-one, please don't hesitate to reach out, send us an email, or give us a call. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.